Hi, welcome to our presentation anchored to the meaningful theory. This time, we will be talking about one of the most influential psychologists in the field of educational psychology, and this is David Paul Ausubel. He was born on October 25, 1918, and he died on July 9, 2008 at the age of 90. His most significant contributions were in the fields of educational psychology, cognitive psychology, learning cognitive development, and investigating how our learning is organized and the significant advances of it.
Ausubel considered that learning new knowledge is based on what we already know. This means that in order to learn, we create a kind of network of concepts, in which we have new information and relate that information to what we already know. This is what we know as meaningful learning. But before delving into it, let's look at other important concepts in Ausubel theory. Let's start by defining what learning means. Learning means acquiring information, retaining it, and retrieving it at some point. Another important point for Ausubel was that he considered the reception learning was more effective than discovery learning or rote learning. Reception learning occurs when the teacher presents the student with the concepts already organized and adjusted. This type of learning can be meaningful. On the contrary, discovery learning implies that the student is responsible for digesting the material on its own. This type of learning can also be meaningful.
Let's look at other important concepts in Ausubel's theory. Let's start by defining what learning means. Discovery learning and rote learning.
Discover learning and rote learning.
Discovery learning is the most common in universities and teaching training courses, in which professors give long reading materials to students for them to read and select the most important information, which according to your ability to synthesize can result in a few lines or in 90% of the shades. Finally, rote learning implies the memorization of information as it is presented with no need to make modification or related to other information. This type of learning cannot be meaningful. We use this learning when we need to learn information that cannot be modified, such as phone numbers or dates. We can see an example of this in the scene of the Disney sitcom Hannah Montana, in which the protagonist must take an exam, but it is impossible for her to complete it, since when she studied, she memorized the concept using a dance routine that she must be beat in order to remember everything.
Okay, here we go. Question number 1. Name the 3 bones that make up the arm. Alright, that's the humerus, the radius, and the... Hey, no problem, Miley. Just dance it out. When I milk the cows on Uncle Earl's farm, I use the on the bone that is in my arm. Booyah!
Stuart, are you sending signals? I won't have cheating in my class.
I'm not cheating, really. I'm just taking the test.
Well, then take it without all this.
But
We'll be glad to, Miss Kunkel.
It is important to bear in mind that Ausubel clarifies that in his theory applies only to the learning in the school environment. He did not say, however, that discovery learning does not work, but rather that it is not entirely effective. Now, let's dig a little deeper into the concept of meaningful learning. Ausubel's theory also focuses, as we have already said, on meaningful learning. According to his theory, to learn meaningfully, people must relate new knowledge to relevant concepts they already know. Paired to rote learning, the learner can also incorporate new information into existing knowledge structure. But the new information does not interact with previous knowledge, tends to the relationship and link that occur between you and all knowledge during meaningful learning. The knowledge incorporated in this way is transferred to long-term memory.
According to Ausubels, consider knowledge to be hierarchically organized, that each new information that we incorporate only becomes meaningful if it can be related in some way to what is already known.
Good morning everyone, this is Andrew Kanya, and for today's lesson we'll focus on meaningful learning, and today I will just continue what Chris Montances tackled a while ago. But before we started, let me introduce to you the three aspects of meaningful learning. First is the student approach toward learning. Second is the logical significance. And third is psychological significance. Now, let's first tackle about student approach to learning. Before anything else, let's first define the student approach toward learning. This refers to the variables to influences the student to be willing to make an effort necessary to learn in a meaningful way. Example, in a 2011 movie Beyond the Blackboard, a novice teacher tries to teach a group of children from a poor school in the outskirts of the city, and quickly realizes that the deplorable school context, the diverse family problems, and a destructive behavior among peers interferes with their ability to learn. The intern tries to at least create a peace and playful environment to teach her classes, transforming and decorating her classrooms so that this is more welcoming place where teaching learning process can take place.
Here, give it back! Give me my test back! Hey, what is going on in here? You're supposed to be taking a test. I'll finish the test. He stole my test! Look what you did to her test! Okay, everybody sit down. Why? Because I said so. Sit down. Where do I want to sit? Danny,
Now, let's jump to the second point. It's called logical significance. This means that new information that is presented must not be arbitrary or confusing. It must be offered in a clear and organized way by following a logical coherent sequence. An example in this can be seen in 2011 movie entitled A Bad Teacher. The teacher tries to get the students to answer questions about the book that she not even asked them to read before.
Mockingbirds to page 1. Good. Now, who can tell me why Jem cries when the hole in the tree is filled with cement?
Because she's a crybaby?
Get out. We're here to learn. Anybody else have a problem with that? Good. Now, who has the answer to my question? Nobody's read this book? It's on the syllabus.
Well, you never assigned it to us.
Well, now I am. And we have a quiz tomorrow.
What?
On the first 100 pages.
You can't do that. I have band and jazz band tonight. You haven't had homework all year.
Things are about to change around here. Recess is over.
And lastly, we have psychological significance. This occurs when the content are appropriate to the level of cognitive development, the previous knowledge that student has, in addition response to their interests. In the 1993 film entitled Matilda, we can see a clear example of psychological significance when the teacher Honey decided to review the previous content that she had worked until the day. So Matilda, who was just to her class, could cut up. The teacher begins to review a multiplication table, specifically the table of 2 within the class. Then, we can see all students respond actively and ready to advance to the next level. In this case, the table of 3.
A very good day, because we're going to review everything that we've learned so far. Now, it's all right if you don't understand any of this, because you're brand new. But if you do know an answer, just raise your hand, okay? All right. We've been working on our 2 times tables. Would anyone like to demonstrate? Okay. Let's do some together. 2 times 4 is? 8. 2 times 6 is? 12. 2 times 9 is? 18. Excellent. You've been practicing.
In addition, there are 4 types of meaningful learning. First is the concept formation. Second is the concept assimilation. Third is the propositional learning. And the third is an advanced organizer. So, to define each, let's start with concept formation.
Meaningful learning is the concept formation. Concept formation, which involves retaining the names of ports and other symbols and associating them with what they represent. When one learns word in this meaningless without knowing what is represent, since it could have been called otherwise. Concept formation is assigning a symbol to an idea. For example, seeing a cat in knowing it's called a cat. Second, concept assimilation. On the other hand, the experience will indicate. For example, wild quadruped animal that meows identify with the word cat, and then when he had been learned, it will not be necessary to see a cat to understand what's being talked about when someone mentions the concept. In this case, the concept has been learned, which generalizes our presentation. It allows the cat concept to be attributed to all members of a species. It also applies to the understanding of abstract concepts such as government, country, and mammals. Third, propositional learning. Propositional learning, where the words combine to form new ideas in the form of sentences which have different meaning than the sum of the words in context. To meaningfully understand a proposition, we must first know the meaning of each concept that makes it up, and then the meaning of the whole sentence, which may have a different meaning than some of the words in context. The example of this can be seen in the people learning other languages. They at first might find it difficult to understand expressions and idioms whose meanings are not literal, as for example, in the phrase that the cat is out of the bag. To understand, the cat is out of the bag, what it really means is not enough to just understand each word. And also, we have one last important concept, a theory that we should talk about, and it is the advanced organizer. Advanced organizer are introductory and contextual material or information that is presented before the lesson class or reading materials. It is innate for the student to create a link between the prior knowledge and the new information they receive. Also, Ausubel advanced organizers are divided into 2 categories, the comparative and the explicit. The comparative organizers, they occurs when the teachers, through various stages, try to make the students bring to their minds concepts, the ideas they already know and that will be relevant to the new content they are going to move. In this scene from the movie entitled Harry Potter and the Philosopher, we see how the teachers first reviews one of the movements learned in the previous class using a rhyme, and then he teach them the spell they must combine that one movement to perform with a repetition.
Flick. Everyone? Swish and flick. Good. Oh, and enunciate. Wingardium Leviosa. Off you go then.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Wingardium Leviosa. Stop.
The explosive organizer, they are used when new learning context is unfamiliar to the student. Then, the teacher will try to simplify as much as possible the new ideas necessary to understand all the information that will be studied later. An example of this can be seen once again in the movie A Bad Teacher. In a scene where a teacher tries to teach a new subject in social science class, last announcing is very deductive and simple. New that will be learned in the class.
We have a layover in civics, so buckle up, because it's gonna be a crazy ride.
Main ideas of Ausubel is that his theory is commonly associated with innovative methodologies that emphasizes the student activities such as discovery learning interests or which is made taking into account of children interests. We must not forget, however, that various methodologies can favor meaningful in learning if they take into account of conditions that determine. And now, before we end this video, let us recall the most important concept of meaningful learning by David Paul Ausubel.